A tourist in a robot costume mocked a Royal Guardsman, taunting his horse and crossing the line, literally. The guard's commanding response silenced the crowd, and the tourist's humiliation became a lesson in respect. What happened next shocked everyone. Let's begin. It was a crisp morning in London, and Guardsman William McLaren stood at his post near Buckingham Palace, an unshakable figure of discipline and tradition. His immaculate red tunic and the towering bearskin hat made him a living symbol of heritage, pride, and steadfastness. For William, this wasn't just a job. It was a legacy spanning centuries, a role demanding respect, though seldom receiving it these days. Around him, the morning buzzed with the hum of tourists, all vying for the perfect selfie or video to post online, often at the expense of dignity. And then, like a gaudy stain on an otherwise picturesque scene, he appeared, a man in his mid-30s, strutting into the square in a ridiculous robot costume. Clad in shiny reflective materials, he clanked and clattered, drawing eyes and smirks from the crowd. It was clear from the start this tourist wasn't here to admire history. He was here to be the star of his own performance. "Hey, Mr. Tin Soldier, show us some emotions," he bellowed, arms flailing in exaggerated robotic motions. A few in the crowd chuckled nervously. Others frowned, shifting uncomfortably at the blatant mockery. But the man wasn't deterred. Encouraged by the giggles of a few, he clanked closer to William, waving metallic hands in his face as if he were taunting a mannequin. Now, if you're wondering, does this guy think the Royal Guard is just a theme park attraction? Yes, he does. His smug grin said it all. "I'm a tourist. I paid for this trip. I deserve a show." William, however, stood resolute. His gaze was fixed forward, his body a pillar of calm authority. To the untrained eye, it might seem as though he didn't even notice the absurd man in front of him. But those who knew the guard's discipline understood. William noticed everything. The tourist, unsatisfied with William's silence, decided to escalate. "What's the matter, mate? Cat got your tongue?" he sneered, stepping closer to the guard's horse. With a clank of his boots, he extended a hand toward William's towering bearskin hat. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. "This guy can't be serious," someone murmured. A nearby mother shook her head, pulling her son closer. "That's just disrespectful," she muttered. And she wasn't wrong. But the tourist pressed on, now flapping his metallic arms near the horse's face. The horse snorted, its ears twitching in irritation. William's grip on the reins tightened ever so slightly. A silent warning. The tension was palpable. The crowd held its breath, waiting for something to give. Would William remain unflinching? Would the tourist finally overstep? One thing was certain. This wasn't going to end the way the tourist imagined. Frustrated by the guardsman's silence, the tourist doubled down, clanking his metallic gloves together with obnoxious enthusiasm. The sharp, jarring sound startled the horse, which snorted and shifted uneasily. Did the man notice? Of course not. He was too busy enjoying his self-appointed role as the star of this morning's spectacle. "Step back from the horse, sir." William's voice cut through the air, sharp and authoritative. The command was like a lightning bolt, brief, powerful, and entirely unexpected. The crowd froze mid-breath, their collective shock almost audible. This was a break in the guardsman's stoic silence, a breach of tradition, and everyone knew it. Did the tourist retreat? Of course not. That would require some semblance of self-awareness. Instead, he smirked, turning to the crowd as though they were his personal audience. "Oh, the Tin Man speaks. What's next? A dance?" he jeered, waving his arms like a child demanding attention. A few laughs rippled through the crowd, but they were quieter now, more hesitant. The mood had shifted, and not in his favor. William didn't respond. He didn't have to. his hands subtly tightened on the reins, his every movement exuding control. Meanwhile, the tourist, emboldened by the dwindling attention he still commanded, took another step forward. And that's when it happened. He crossed the white line. The line wasn't just a painted boundary, it was a rule, a symbol of respect, and this man had trampled over it with all the grace of a bull in a china shop. "Let's see if this horse will let me ride," the tourist declared, lifting a foot as if to climb onto the animal's back. A gasp erupted from the crowd. A young boy tugged on his mother's sleeve, his small voice cutting through the tension. Why is that man being so mean? The question, innocent and direct, hung in the air like a moral judgment. And then the atmosphere changed. Some in the crowd began to murmur disapproval. A woman snapped, "Disgusting behavior!" Phones rose like a sea of judgmental eyes, recording every moment. The tourist, oblivious, played on, but now the stage was set for his reckoning. And oh, how fitting it would be. William's eyes remained focused, but inside, a storm of frustration brewed. The tourist's mockery had now escalated into a full-blown disruption. The man in the robot costume leaned closer to the horse, clinking his metallic gloves together again. The horse snorted loudly, its ears twitching back in discomfort. Then it happened, a subtle but significant shift. The horse raised its head sharply, its unease evident. With a firm voice that carried over the murmurs of the crowd, William barked, "Stand back!" His command had the tone of an order, and this time it wasn't just the tourist who froze. The entire crowd went silent. The tourist, momentarily stunned, tried to play it off with a nervous laugh. "What are you gonna do? Arrest me?" he taunted. But before he could say more, the horse, responding to William's subtle shift in reins, stepped forward, forcing the man to stumble back awkwardly. The crowd erupted in cheers and laughter, some clapping in approval. "Serves him right," shouted an older woman, clutching her shopping bag. A nearby teenager muttered, "That's what you get for messing with the king's guard." Red-faced and flustered, the man tried to regain his composure. "You think this is funny?" he snarled at the onlookers, pointing a metallic finger at them. The crowd's growing disdain was palpable, and a few people began calling him out for his behavior. Sensing the tourist's retreat, William seized the moment to restore order. With practiced precision, he guided the horse back into position, its movements calm but deliberate. The horse's display of control had spoken louder than any words, leaving the tourist with no further moves to make. The crowd, now united in support of the guardsman, began to disperse, but not before a mother approached William with her young son in tow. "Thank you," she said softly, nodding her appreciation. The boy, wide-eyed, looked up at William. "You're like a real superhero," he whispered. William allowed himself the faintest of smiles, an imperceptible gesture to most, but one the boy would remember for years to come. Meanwhile, the tourist, now thoroughly humiliated, was approached by a pair of security personnel who had been alerted by the disturbance. "Time to leave, sir," one of them said firmly. With little choice, the man in the robot costume trudged away, head lowered, as some onlookers filmed his exit. As the square quieted, William adjusted his stance and resumed his stoic position. The crowd thinned, and the usual rhythm of the day returned. For William, it was just another moment in his service. But for those who had witnessed the exchange, it was a lesson in dignity and discipline. A young couple walking past paused to admire the scene. "They're not just ceremonial, are they?" the man remarked. His partner nodded. "No, they're a symbol of something bigger. Tradition, respect, something we could all use more of." In the end, the guardsman and his horse stood unshaken, a silent testament to the enduring values they represented.